I think we all need to be needed, right? We all need to be needed. And it's satisfying to know that we can make a contribution or assist others in their need. Being in the whirlwind of life's activity, sometimes we think that it's never going to end. We get caught up in things and it just, when is this going to end? But it does end. It does end. Sometimes it's slowly through a chain of events, or sometimes it does happen abruptly and without warning. But we find ourselves sidelined, and we find ourselves no longer in demand. We find ourselves no longer needed. And we begin to wonder, am I really worth anything? Nobody needs me. Am I really worth anything? The 8th song in the Old Testament, hymnal, Psalms, shouts a resounding yes. Yes, you are. It is a psalm of encouragement for those who, whether because of age or because of illness, feel bypassed, or they feel that they have been set aside or useless. And what it does is it highlights the value that God places on each and every one of us. Truly, if what must I do to be saved is the greatest question, I think this would be the follow-up. And I think that follow-up question is, why would God love someone like me? Why would he? Why would God, when you look at the things that I've done in my life, the things that you've done in your life, and we think, man, I've messed up a lot. Why would God love someone like me? Well, let's read Psalm chapter 8, and let's see what it says. Lord, our Lord, how magnificent is your name throughout the earth. You have covered the heavens with your majesty. From the mouths of infants and nursing babies, you have established a stronghold on account of your adversaries, in order to silence the enemy and the avenger. When I observe your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you set in place, what is a human being that you remember him? A son of man that you look after him? You made him a little less than God and crowned him with glory and honor. You made him ruler over the works of your hands. You put everything under his feet. All the sheep and oxen, as well as the animals in the wild, the birds of the sky, and the fish of the sea that pass through the currents of the seas. Lord, our Lord, how magnificent is your name throughout the earth. That is such a great psalm. And some believe that Psalm 8 is composed by David after his victory over Goliath. Regardless of when it was written, though, it is a poem of praise and honor in honor of God's majesty. I think that is the theme of Psalm chapter 8, is majesty. It's as if David stands beneath a canopy of stars. And I'm sure everyone here has done that before, where you stand and it's an open sky and you just look at the stars in the sky. And he looks into the vastness of space and he says, "Oh Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth." The psalm opens and closes with that same refrain. And again, I know all of us have stood on a mountaintop, stood on a beach and overlooked the ocean, or looked up into the skies and saw the stars and thought, wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. And so we can see that God's majesty is displayed in the heavens. The Creator has invested the physical world with an awesome reminder of his majesty and his might. We see it every day. We're reminded of it every single day. And again, it is very difficult to stand under the night sky or stand on a mountaintop and not worship the Creator. It's very hard to do that. Verse 3, notice what it says. When I observe your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you set in place. Standing beneath the stars, how big do you feel? How big? Yeah, about that big, right? Yeah, it's like a dot, right? And, Eli always gives me a hard time because he's taller than me now. And he makes fun of my height, but I don't care. We have fun with it. But again, when you take the tallest person on the earth, which I think is like 8'2", standing underneath the stars, they are but a speck. They're just a dot. And so, again, even the stars are a reminder of his profound love for man. Everything God created, everything he created, did he create for our benefit? Everything he created. Now we might ask, the question, why mosquitoes? And I was watching a video. A guy was over, I forget where he was, somewhere where Abraham had lived, Abraham and Lot. And he was talking to the group that he was with, and he kept doing this. And finally he went like this and knocked his hat off. And they started laughing, and he said, sometimes I wonder why Noah didn't just step on those 2 flies, right? But everything God created is for our benefit. And the words of Stuart Hine, I think, are very appropriate. And we sing it all the time, and it's a great song. O Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder. And what's the name of the song? How great thou art. Do we appreciate it when we sing those words? Do we think of that song when we go outside and we see his creation? We also see God's majesty displayed in an infant child. From the heaven above to the tiniest baby in the mother's womb. It's amazing. From the tiniest baby in a mother's arms, God shows himself to be majestic. Which raises the question, how can anyone look in the face of a baby and deny the presence of God? Who can do that? Who can look at a newborn baby and not see the presence of God? You see, the enemies of God are silenced when man considers the wonder of the heavens, the birth of a child, and neither reflect man's doing. Neither one of those reflect man's doing. Infants may be small, and the stellar space is silent, but again, they both convey a profound significance to the observer. And both of those, again, from the stars in the sky to a little baby, reminds us that God loves his creation. He loves his creation. Above all, who does he love? Above everything else, who does he love? Us, his children. John 3:16. For God so loved the world. Is he talking about his physical? Yeah, Is he talking about the stars and, I don't know. He's talking about us. For God so loved the world. He so loved us that he gave his only Son. Any thoughts so far? The question is asked, what is man? The CSB says, what is a human being? What is a human being? And maybe David wrote this psalm at night while, pondering the vastness of space as he looks into the night sky, gripped with the splendor of supernatural phenomena. Again, he was overwhelmed. And he asked, "Oh Lord, what is insignificant and frail man? Why do you even think about us? I mean, we are so small. Why do you even consider us?" And David's question, what is man, gets to the essence of origin. Who am I? Purpose, which is why am I here? And 3, destiny. Where am I going? Man has always asked those questions. Man has always asked, who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? Well, what is man? Man is a highly developed animal. That's according to Darwin. Man is just a highly developed animal. Or Sigmund Freud, man is an underdeveloped child, is what he said. Or Karl Marx, man is an economic factor. You see how people view man? But the important thing to remember is this. What man thinks of man is not nearly important as to what God thinks of man. I don't care what any human being says. I don't care what Darwin or any psychologist or anything like that. I don't care what they have to say. What does God think of man? And David ponders in verses 6 through 8 that God thinks so much of us, that God thinks so much of man that he made him to be king over all creation. If man was created to be king and rule over God's created world, then why isn't he acting like a king? Why isn't he? Why is man in so much trouble if he was given so much power? Why do you think? Why do you think man has become the slave of creation rather than its sovereign? What do you think? 1 3-letter word. Sin.
Yeah.
Sin. It is sin. Sin robbed man of his full potential. That's what it did. In view of what man has done with his exalted privilege, David is amazed that God still even cares. Why should a sinless creator care about a sinful creature? Why? God is perfect. He is perfect. Jesus came and walked on this earth and lived a perfect life. How does someone who is sinless and perfect care about someone like me? And sometimes that's, we struggle with that sometimes. Satan creeps in and he starts whispering those things to us. You're nothing. You are nothing. And he wants us to believe that. So we ask, why should a sinless creator care about a sinful creature? But the fact is, he does. He does. And it's a testimony at once to the amazing love and grace of God. Again, it's a love that I don't think I can ever understand. I don't think anybody can understand. Because again, it's a love to where he sent his son to die. And when his son was on the cross, he turned away. And again, as we've mentioned, that was the one and only time that Jesus was away from his Father, because God turned his back. Because he carried the sin of the world, he died on the cross. And I've asked this question before. We say, if God loved me, if God loved me. I want you to think about something. If you were to take your child and sacrifice your child for my life, or your child was sacrificed for my life, and then I said to you, do you really love me? How would you feel? Think about that. If I looked at you after what your child did for me, and I say, I don't know if you really love me or not. Really? And none of us would give our child for anyone. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it at all. That's why I say this is a love that it's hard for me to comprehend. Because again, I've messed up in this life. You've messed up in this life. We are sinners. And here is a perfect creator who loved us enough that he sent his son, and his son willingly left heaven to come to this earth and die for us. That is love. That is love. But I want you to compare Psalm chapter 8, verses 6 through 8, to Genesis chapter 1. So, in Psalm chapter 8, verses 6 through 8, it says, "You made him ruler over the works of your hands. You put everything under his feet, all the sheep and oxen, as well as the animals in the wild, the birds of the sky and the fish of the sea that pass through the currents of the seas." Now, go back to Genesis chapter 1. Notice what he says on verses 26 through 28. "Then God said, 'Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. They will rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the livestock, the whole earth, and the creature that crawl on the earth.' So God created man in his own image. He created him in the image of God. He created them male and female. God blessed them, and God said to them, 'Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. Rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and every creature that crawls on the earth.'" Here we learn 5 truths. We learn 5 truths. Number 1, man was created by God. We know that. Man was not the result of an evolutionary process. It was not by the product of chance and not an afterthought. We were never an afterthought. Man was the creature for which all else was created. He was the climax of it all. But number 2, whose image was man created in? God's image. We were created in the image of God. Man and animals were both formed by the dust of the ground. Yet man rises above because only man is said to be in the image of God. Man is not God. Man will never be God. But what man is he carries his image. We carry the image of God. Man is a dual being. We have a soul that lives on. I've said this before. There was a time when you did not exist. But there will never, ever, ever be a time where you will never exist again. We are eternal. We are eternal beings. But number 3, man was created for God's glory. That's why man was created. Man reflects the glory of the one who made him. Look in the book of Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 43. In Isaiah chapter 43, we'll look at verses 6 through 7. Isaiah 43, beginning of verse 6. I will say to the north, give them up, and to the south, do not hold them back. Bring my sons from far away, and my daughters from the ends of the earth. Everyone who bears my name and is created for my glory, I have formed them. Indeed, I have made them. Like the moon reflects the glory of the sun. Do you realize that we also reflect the glory of the sun? Therefore, you have the admonition of Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 31. He says, do all to the glory of God. Number 4, man was created, as I said, to be king of creation. Well, what do kings do? Kings rule. That's what kings do. Kings rule. Man was made to rule the creation. But number 5, man lost his throne because of sin. We were made to rule, but we lost that privilege because of sin. By Genesis 3, already man has blown that privilege. It didn't last too long, did it? Instead of being the victor of creation, he becomes the victim. The victim. He even tries to hide from God. You remember that? You know, they sin and then they try to hide from God. Sin had robbed him of his full potential. And so in view of what man did with his exalted privilege, that's why I say you can see where David is still amazed that God still cares. God still cares. But you see, the celestial bodies obey God and give him glory. Yet man comes along, the king of creation, and he disobeys. Have you noticed something? Do you notice that the animals, the plants, and the planets don't disobey? They don't do it. You don't see it. Only man. It is only man that will look at God and say, no. Who do the animals rely on? Huh? Animals rely on man?
No, God.
God. Yeah. Now, yeah, your dog at home, man, you know. But you think about how some of these animals survive. The instincts that they have. Where do they get that from? They get it from God. But you don't see animals trying to do something that is completely against what they were created for. You don't see lions saying, hey, that gazelle over there, I'm interested in her and not for food. Do you? You don't see it. They stick with their kind. They don't tell God, nope, I'm going to do something different. Only man does that. It is only man.
But
Go ahead.
would we consider Lucifer? We wouldn't consider him a man, would we?
Well,
He was an angel created by God.
Well, that's another study in and of itself, because when you look at that context in Isaiah where it's talking about Lucifer, it's talking about the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar. So a lot of people think that Lucifer is Satan because of what it says. And it does sound a lot like, an angel falling from heaven. But when you look at the context, and I can't remember the chapter in Isaiah where that's at, but if you look at the context, it talks about the king of Babylon. And so I think that's who...
So God called...
Because Lucifer means day star.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is God called Nebuchadnezzar his greatest creation or in heaven?
Well, he was very powerful, and God gave him that power. And so you have to.
But he was not in heaven.
No,
Right?
no. But again, the context. If you look at the context matters. It mentions the king of Babylon as who he's talking about. He's talking to. So again, that's another study. It's a good study. There's there's another section in Ezekiel that I think is talking about the king of Tyre, I think in the context, but says the same thing. And again, I don't remember the exact chapter in Ezekiel. But look at that. It's in Isaiah, Lucifer's in Isaiah, and then in Ezekiel is another one that refers to, in Ezekiel it even mentions how you were in Eden with me. So that makes it sound more like Satan than what Isaiah does. But in that context, in Ezekiel, he's talking to the king of Tyre. So a good study. I wasn't prepared for that one tonight, but it definitely is good. I would encourage all of you to look at that. Look at that. It is definitely interesting. Any other thoughts? So, with Adam, man lost his privileged position. But with Christ, it is regained, isn't it? With Christ, it is regained. Look at Hebrews chapter 2. Hebrews chapter 2, verses 6 through 9, I think make Psalm 8 come alive. In Hebrews chapter 2, beginning in verse 6. But someone, somewhere, has testified. What is man that you remember him? Or the Son of Man that you care for him? You made him lower than the angels for a short time. You crowned him with glory and honor, and subjected everything under his feet. For in subjecting everything to him, he left nothing that is not subject to him. As it is, we do not yet see everything subjected to him. But we do see Jesus made lower than the angels for a short time, so that by God's grace he might taste death for everyone, crowned with glory and honor because he suffered death. Man was made to reign, lost his throne because of sin. Jesus now comes to fix the problem and return man to glory. That is what Jesus did. God the Father, again, created us to be kings. God the Son redeemed us to be kings. In Revelation chapter 5, verses 9 through 10.
Revelations what?
Revelation chapter 5, verses 9 and 10. And they sang a new song. You are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, because you were slaughtered, and you purchased people for God by your blood, from every tribe and language and people and nation. You made them a kingdom and priests to our God, and they will reign on the earth. Think about that. Who reigns on the earth? Well, Satan's the ruler. But what does it say here in verse 10? Christians. Christians. Notice, again, it says, you made them a kingdom and priests to our God, and they will reign on the earth. And so the question becomes, how do we start living like kings? We're supposed to be reigning, aren't we? How do we live like that? Well, when you think about King David and David's battle with Goliath, he showed how man was created to act. He said, I come to you in the name of who? The Lord. Young David, I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts. Now, how did that giant view that little shepherd boy? Like a little gnat. Like, I'm just going to swat you away. You're nothing. You're absolutely nothing. But Psalm 8 and verse 2, out of the mouth of babes and infants you have established strength. Goliath disdained David because he was just a kid. Yet David's childlike faith has become an example of complete trust in God's power. David trusted in God. You know, you think about Goliath, and it said he was about 10 feet tall. Now, I can't see him being, a little skinny guy either. Anybody remember how much the head of his spear weighed? Just the head of his spear was 15 pounds. That's not including everything else. This was a big man. Here is a little shepherd boy. So, of course, Goliath's going to shoo him off. He's not worried, but that little boy, did he put just a little bit of trust in God? He put the whole trust into God. Because if he just had a little trust, how do you think he would have responded? Hesitate? I don't know. Should I? Should I not? I don't know. And if you remember, when he showed up to bring his brothers food, and he hears this giant out there talking bad about God, David, that made him mad. And he was like, why are you all letting him say this? Why are you all allowing him to do this? Because they were afraid. Did those other people trust in God? I would say yes, they did. But not fully trusted. They worshiped him, didn't they? So I think there was trust in God, but it was that I'm not really sure if God is going to protect us from this giant of a man. David said, I don't care how big he is, my God is bigger. You see, there's a difference there. And I think some of us serve God that way. We trust him. If I were to ask everyone in here, and you don't have to raise your hand if you trust God, all of us would probably raise our hand. And then if I said, but how many of you have ever hesitated to do something out of fear? You see? We trust God, but we hesitate. We have the fear of the Israel army, that we trust them, but can't, don't know if I fully trust them yet. And that's where we got to be careful. And so the words at the beginning and end of Psalm 8 are the reason, I think, why David challenged Goliath. He believed in the majesty. He believed in the Almighty. David won the battle over the giant because he acted like man was created to act. Fully trust in God. I will provide for you. I will protect you. Just put all of your trust into me. David won the battle because he acted with complete trust in God. All of which says David was a leader in heart long before he ever took the throne. That's why God chose David. God knew David's heart. And he knew, because David had other brothers. He had older brothers. Remember when Samuel came and told Jesse, he wanted to see his sons? He left one of them out. He left David out. Why did he leave David out? He was the run. He was the run of the litter. His brothers, I'm sure, were built and soldiers, and they might look like they would make a good king, but God looked inside and said, no, this is a kid who trusts me completely. And so, like David, we all have to face our giants. Every single one of us, whether it's physical problems, whether it's job loss, whether it's money troubles, loneliness. I mean, the list can go on and on and on. Either we are the victor or we are the victim. And if we depend upon ourselves, like Adam, we fall. If we depend upon the power of God, like David, we succeed. And so the question is, what is man? Well, the answer depends upon who you choose to hear. If you listen to the deceiver, then you're going to live as a slave to sin. If you listen to the voice of God, you will reign with his Son. Living as a Christian is the only way to reach full human potential. And certainly, if the heavens obey God and proclaim his majesty, think about how much more will obedient man do the same. Any thoughts on Psalm chapter 8? Again, I hope we go back and we reread Psalm chapter 8. And I hope it motivates us. I hope it encourages us. And again, I've had moments throughout my life. And I'll still have those moments where I trust God, but then there's always that fear of, should I or should I not? Should I do this or should I not? You know, again, I bring him up a lot with Peter. You think Peter was afraid to get out of that boat when there was a storm? He did. He walked on water. And so we got to trust God completely. It's not easy to do sometimes. So we got to work on that. We got to make sure we trust him completely. All right, thank you. And we will pick up there next week.